My name is Oscar. It is my absolute pleasure to be here to to host a panel on creativity in out-of-home, creative panel. We are sadly missing someone today, but I think these two guys will do a fantastic job, or at least, yeah, I should cover it. They look like talkative guys. But we are going to, of course, start with a little bit of introduction. Well, quickly, my name is Oskar Op de Beke. I am the creative lead for Kinetic here in the Benelux. I also do a bit of work for our global innovation team. That's me in a nutshell. But I have a little task for you guys. I want you to introduce yourself in 30 seconds or less. Just because we're behind schedule, right? But I also want you to, at the end, give us either your favorite pizza topping or your favorite flavor of ice cream. Okay. Which one of you wants to go first?
That's easy. So my name's Keith. I'm a founder of Voodooh. I've been working in out-of-home since 1999, which is just staggering, and only ever on digital. So it shows you that I'm actually 90 years old minimum. I've been in pure out-of-home since 2007, working for an Israeli tech company, and then moved into Clear Channel. I've since been with Grand Visual, with DOOH. I've been in domestic roles and international roles, and Voodooh is the product of years of frustration working with out-of-home, basically. That's a good summary. Favorite pizza topping? Salami.
Tough question,
maybe?
Right?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. All right. Yeah, good choice. Good choice. All right, Rick, your turn.
Hi, I'm Rick. I'm a creative director for Grand Visual. Grand Visual are a creative agency for digital out-of-home. We provide creative solutions across just digital out-of-home. I've been working there for 7 years coming up. I've worked with Keith in my time. My job's really to craft stories and get the best out of the creative and really kind of engage people in a variety of ways and use digital out-of-home in its best possible way under the creative umbrella. Favorite pizza topping? Probably anchovies.
Intriguing. Okay, that took an unexpected turn. Rick, actually, I'm having a bit of a fanboy moment because you're responsible for one of my favorite out-of-home activations, or at least responsible, or at least you were involved with the Oreo Eclipse. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So the Oreo Eclipse, I think it happened a couple of years ago. It all blends together all these years. What actually the campaign was, it ran for 4 hours during the solar eclipse out in the UK and across kind of Europe. And what we did is we partnered with Oreo and created a 4-hour campaign with the Oreo cookies that gradually spanned across the screen and created an eclipse at the same time as when the eclipse was happening. What was kind of cool about it was that it was a 4-hour video, which I'm sure for all kind of you media owners, you're not used to scheduling 4 hours of video. We're not used to creating 4 hours of it. But it synced up perfectly with the moon as it tracked across. So just at that point where the solar eclipse happened, it became a kind of an Oreo eclipse. And it was just a really nice, simple campaign that we did in It was a kind of a bit of a strange way we came about it, but it's another story and probably another panel for that one.
All right. Wait for the Oreo Eclipse panel. That's coming up soon. Well, that sort of leads into my first question. So in this circumstance, really the context involved was the solar eclipse. It was a big thing for all those people who are really into solar eclipse. I think I missed it. I was too busy looking at the screen. First question is about context. So out of home, as we saw earlier, you could maybe have out-of-home in business environments, you could have out-of-home in schools, shopping malls, hospitals, doctors' offices. Really, out-of-home is everywhere, except for in the home. So my first question is about context. So we're gonna go to Keith over there. What role does context play in creating a creative concept for out-of-home?
I think context is everything. I mean, every screen knows where it is, therefore it knows its audience, therefore it knows the environment around it, therefore it knows, what retailers in the area, etc., etc. So context in terms of creativity is everything. The concern is not on our side of the fence necessarily. The concern is higher up the chain where the creative agencies and the clients are not necessarily aware of the capabilities or of that basic truth of out-of-home. And I think the education piece is still in its infancy. It needs to be, we need to educate clients a lot more on that basic premise.
On what context specifically out of home is located?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that
yeah.
you have a panel in a location gives it context automatically. So every panel comes with context. It's just not being utilized at this point.
Yeah, nice.
I think, just to add on that, for me, digital out of home used to be this media channel where it was a bolt-on to all the other ones. So you had your online strategy and your social strategy. And then kind of the creative agencies were, well, we've got some digital out of home. What kind of artwork can we chuck on it? So it didn't have that context or that relation to the audience that we require for digital out of home to make it work at its best. We are seeing a change there. You know, digital out of home can sometimes drive the rest of the media and social strategies. And otherwise, there's more consideration from kind of creative agencies on how it's going to work as a context basis. I think, for me, context, as Keith rightly says, it is everything. When we approach a creative idea, it's knowing your screen, your audience, your dwell time, how long they're going to be there, who's watching it, how all of that works. And if you've got all of that and then you create an idea just for those people, you're going to maximize the potential of that creative. And that's really what we're trying to push every time. We know it doesn't always happen, but you know, that's the goal.
So my next question after that was about the challenges that you encounter. So Ric, in creating content and you providing solutions, the challenges that you're encountering now is really for creating a contextually relevant activation or campaign is really in about educating the client, is really in about educating the brands.
So yeah, how many media owners in the room? That would be a good question. Right, so the question really is, are your clients coming to you with the right ideas? Right, so you're basically a media owner, you are taking the ads, and I can name one media owner on the planet, one business unit on the planet that will reject ads if they're not full motion, for example, right? But most media owners just have to take whatever's given to them because they're media owners. But the creativity is often not there. So the education piece needs to happen both with media owners and agencies, but most importantly with the creatives right at the top. We found in our work that if we can educate those guys into the power of out of home, they can define an entire advertising strategy against that information.
Right. Well, that sort of leads into my next question, which is about the media owners. So at this point, I want to ask you what role, so from a content production and solutions side, what role does a media owner play in creating a creative out-of-home concept? And what role should they be playing in creating this concept?
Oh, okay. Ric, I'll jump this one first. They can play a variety of roles. I think the more commitment a media owner has throughout the creative concept and production, the better. I think we work best when everyone joins together to really kind of get that end creative up on the screen and working in its best way. And I think a media owner can sometimes feel like they don't have to worry about it until it comes to them. And I think when we work with the media owners, whether it's via the technology or scheduling or anything else in between, you know, that's where things really come to life. I think, I mean, sometimes a media owner will work with us on the pitch at the beginning. You know, we have media owners who have certain inventory or technology and go, right, we want to sell this in. We've got a great idea for that. And we can work with media owners at that point to help craft ideas to sell direct to the agencies or the brands. I think, you know, there needs to be more of a kind of an initiative from media owners to really push themselves creatively as well, not to be frightened of it, to know they've got the support to join in at that point. You know, and at the same point, with technology, there's this level that sometimes we'll work with a media owner and they might not have the technology installed, but then we'll work with the media owner to make sure that they've got the right tech to achieve that kind of end creative story. Other times they might have it installed and we'll need to work out how it's going to work best. For me, and kind of to sum up what I'm saying is, the creative story is the king of all of this. It's all about that end thing of what is the creative doing, how does it create those emotions, and the technologies and the partners and everyone in between is just the glue to help that story be told.
To that point, one of my concerns would be the fact that media owners have very rapidly become tech companies, and a lot of them are not behaving like tech companies. So, for example, Grand Visual's campaigns often require a lot of input from the media owners. They require testing, they require a whole bunch of processors. Some media owners, some business units have one guy who does all of that, right? Clem just laughed at me. He's guilty. And basically, if a media owner has a single guy doing all their digital tech, whether it's supporting it, monitoring, scheduling, plus all the testing, etc., that poor guy simply is overstretched. So media owners, if there's one thing that I could chant out now to be what I've been chanting for years, double your tech teams, double your tech teams, double your tech teams.
Double your tech teams. I just want to repeat it just in case you guys didn't get it.
That's an operations person, almost guaranteed.
I love the enthusiasm. I love the enthusiasm. So to sum up, basically, a lot of what I'm hearing is media owners need to up their game a bit in order to facilitate a creative concept, to let it come alive. But at the same time, media owners know a lot about their objects. They know a lot about the context around their objects. They know a lot about how they function. So they really also should be there as well, or could be there at the beginning to help develop that creative concept, a concept that really fits perfectly for that screen, that audience, that area.
Yeah, I would say another point as well is technical sales, right? So media owners at this point are selling space. What they're not selling is what myself and Ric do, which is the non-standard executions. And if salespeople go out and sell, worst case scenario, a live streaming concept with the deliverable in 2 or 3 days' time, it's simply not going to happen. So the media owner sales teams need to become more technically sales-driven, as it were, so that they're selling things that their poor, overworked operations teams can actually deliver in the times that they have.
Absolutely. Everyone's got to be on top of things, right? I mean, I know for sure coming from the agency side that we get a lot of, can we, next week, possible? Large, spectacular, next week?
The answer is yes, but that'll be triple the budget.
I just don't have that kind of time. My next question is really about taking things one step further. So out of home is great at delivering impact. It's great at getting people's attention. But my question is really about taking things one step further, getting that engagement with the audience. So I want to ask you guys, how can out of home really engage with audiences? Talking about any form of engagement. For example, you could have wanting people to share your creative online on Instagram, whatever it may be. I'm millennial, so it's just Instagram for me. How can out of home achieve that, digital out of home achieve that with the audiences?
I think with engagement, you've got to first understand what you're wanting from the engagement. Are you wanting someone to look at a screen and have brand retention from the creative? Are you wanting someone to look at a screen and get on their mobile and go straight to an offer? Are you wanting someone to take a photo of the screen and share it? Or are we actually trying to create engagement from creating a story itself and putting it online and getting the millions of hits that way? I think when you understand the outcome at the beginning, you get to craft a story appropriate to that engagement. So, I mean, to answer your question, how do you increase that engagement? Better creative, a better story. At the end of the day, the best creative is the one that evokes emotions or evokes a need or a retention for the brand. And that really does come down to the creative. It's not about the technology. The creative story uses technology to help tell its story. But you know, when we did the Pepsi Max AR bus stop, which some of you may remember, after that for about a year, we used to just get phone call after phone call saying, we want to do a Pepsi Max AR. And
still in some of my decks, by the way.
And the trouble with that was that they hadn't actually thought of how the story was going to work or how it's going to sell their product. They just wanted a cool bit of AR tech. And without the kind of the end story, the technology means nothing. Similarly, some of our best campaigns have, like Oreo, just to say, is that when we started the Oreo Eclipse, we started working out how to do all these kind of algorithms and formula to map the eclipse and how we were going to do it dynamically, whether it was going to be in Flash and all this stuff. And at the end of the day, we worked out we could actually just make a 4-hour movie. So it wasn't using any clever stuff behind it. But the point being that the end impression, that end creative and the impact and the emotion it told, it doesn't matter what the tech is that you're using. So for me, kind of getting back to the point, to evoke those emotions, it's to really elevate the story and work out how you're going to achieve that through commitment from the media owners, the agencies, the creative agencies, the technical agencies, the production houses, and everyone in between, all for that one goal.
Great.
Yeah, we had an AR brief the other day, and my first question was back to the media owner was whether they had cameras in their units, and the answer was no. So that
Step one.
sort of ended. But I would say creative is everything, yes. We see a lot of poor creative, and there's some reasoning behind that. Out of home is not at the front of mind often. And what we're seeing is 90% of content that out of home gets starts life as a print campaign, or it starts life as a TV ad, right? And at some point, somebody decides to put out of home on the plan, and they've got to go back and repurpose those assets. And they haven't been considered for out of home from day one. So again, it's about education. If we can get to the highest point of the path and engage with creative people, then we can educate them from the very top, and they can start to think about out of home different before they even start their ideas.
Yeah, that actually it already addressed one of my questions already. I was going to ask, I mean, yeah, I work for a media agency, so I'm well aware at how many static posters we get that are put on digital screens, where you could have just done a poster. So my question then would be, what do we need in order to convince the agencies, to convince the creatives that they need to think beyond static creative for digital out of home? Or just chopping up a TVC and putting it on there? How do we convince them?
I think it's about getting higher up the food chain. You have to educate, and you have to be at the front of mind with the creative people when they start to think about these ideas that they're generating, so that out of home becomes part and parcel of it, as opposed to an afterthought, which it often is at the moment.
I think to join on that, there are some media formats that are subtle motion, and we've worked with media owners before who, when a static creative goes through, they'll come back and say, hey, did you know we're subtle motion? We can do more than this. And similarly, you know, you don't have to necessarily go into the more complex dynamic or interactive campaigns to hit that added engagement. Scheduling is really important. This is something that the media owners can take ownership of, is you can have copy that works in the morning and have copy that works in the afternoon and the evening or the weekend, and have different messaging to engage with your audience without the need to kind of go into the heavier dynamic jobs, really. And it's about starting at the beginning and understanding that creativity can be smarter without necessarily more complex. It's about challenging people and all of us kind of baby steps. And it's happening, and we're seeing smarter creative, but you know, you still see a lot of those static JPEGs around when they just don't need to be.
Absolutely. So yeah, basically to sum up a bit, we need a bit of push from the creative agency side, really in terms of how we need to educate the clients. Maybe it's we need them to see that digital out of home, that full motion content can look sexy on digital out of home, can really have an impact when it's on digital out of home, and so you should be doing it. And then also maybe some pushback agency, media agency, but also from the vendors to say, hey, this is what we can actually do. And you should be thinking a bit further, and this is what we continue to get from you guys. You mentioned dynamic creatives, and I absolutely agree. I think there's also there's still beauty in time of day. There's still beauty in the simplicity of that. But we are seeing a lot more dynamic creatives these days, a lot more data sources that we have available to us in order to create dynamic, relevant creatives. You know, we're seeing things weather-based, well, not eclipse-based, apparently. I found out it's a 4-hour video. But my question to you guys then, so we've seen already a couple of great dynamic cases. Where is dynamic going in 2019 and maybe 2020? What do we expect to see from dynamic? And is you guys are probably all familiar with the little toddler who gets up and points to the plane as it flies over, British Airways, anyway. Is that still the standard to live up to, or should we be thinking beyond that?
That's not the standard to live up to at all. It's a controversial point of view, because it's a one-off campaign. It's mega intensive production, and in terms of value to the media owner, not a lot at all. And so in terms of looking forward, what I would like to see is data campaigns just becoming normal, just standard. The data is there, even if it's the simplest time of day, weather triggers, whatever it is. but it just needs to become normal. As an industry, we also have a problem in that we announce a weather campaign as if it's the next great thing. We shouldn't be bothering, really. It should just be normal, right? As Catch-22, we have to announce these things to keep the message going. But I long for the day when an average data campaign just doesn't even make the press anymore. That would be brilliant.
On the flip side of that, we see often
Finally,
clients...
disagreement, I like it.
It's not quite, but we often see clients wanting to have a new data set. What's the new thing that we can use? And it's not about them. They, the data sets are, barring the first-party data, they sort of remain the same. It's how you tell the story. So we did a weather campaign last year for McDonald's, which kind of had all the weather symbols as the different McDonald's icons and
Love
things.
that one. Beautiful.
And it won a load of awards.
Also fanboying.
It was just a weather campaign. It was, as Keith says, it's not something that kind of was a new sort of well-beating thing, but at the same point, the story was told so beautifully that it didn't matter that it was the weather data set that was driving it. To go back to your question, my view on where we're going with things is scale. It's global scale. We did something for Spotify at the end of last year that hit 6 or 7 countries at the same time across large format screens in New York and London and all other places. And it was cross-media owner, cross-country, as it were, cross-market. And it had a massive power to kind of launch something across all these different countries at once. And for me, what I'm seeing is we are starting to blend those boundaries, and we're starting to blend the boundaries between media owners and also blend the boundary between markets too. So I want to continue seeing these larger dynamic campaigns. If it works in one country, why isn't it in another country? It should, these things aren't market specific, or they don't have to be. So I'd like to see more of those. I think my experience in Grand Visual is we've been producing content for Warner Brothers now, and we deliver it to over 60 markets per film. And what it shows, it's a success story of digital out of home. It shows that we've got markets as varied as Nicaragua and Azerbaijan ordering digital out of home, and we're getting this global scale. And for me, seeing that success and seeing our creative being used under a global barrier or global guise is a really nice thing and satisfying to understand that creative can be driven across the world rather than on one screen and one market.
If I can add to that, part of that scale is coming from commonality of platforms. So a bit of a convenient plug here. The fact that Broadsign is becoming a de facto platform, CMS of choice for most media owners, means that scale is automatically achievable. So when a production company like GV or Voodooh create a campaign that we know will run on certain versions of Broadsign, then we know that there's a whole bunch of media owners that we can automatically deploy that campaign into. So scale comes from commonality of platforms, and Broadsign is making great traction on that.
Great. All right. Actually, you brought up one thing, very important thing. I mean, we've got a couple of media owners in here. So maybe Rick, if you had a message to media owners for how they could make your life a bit easier in executing a campaign using dynamic content across multiple markets, what would your message be?
God, that's a big one.
Yeah, sorry.
Double your tech teams.
If you need a minute, you can take a minute.
Be accessible. Be accessible to the production houses. Be accessible to the clients. Make your product work for the creative idea. Bend the rules. Don't be constrained. Don't worry about the constraints. If that idea is really awesome and you have no idea how to do it, half the time we don't know how we're going to do something when we first sign up to it. Be willing. Be willing to put that camera in that you haven't got installed in your screen. Be willing to reduce your testing fees if it's going to get you out there as a PR level of things. Be willing to lead the charge rather than follow up, because I think digital out of home is driven by, not only kind of that consistency and the scale, but also those big campaigns. And every single one of those big campaigns has been not led by the media owners, but they've contributed in a really kind of active way rather than sitting back and allowing something to show on their screens. So that would be my call to arms to you is push the boundaries.
Double your tech teams.
Triple it.
You should just rename the name of this panel to Double Your Tech Teams. You know why it says creative on there. Fantastic. My next question, actually, I want to go back to a question about, we talked about engagement, we talked about getting people maybe to share your content online. I wanted to ask, what role does context, what role does moment play in getting people to want to share your out-of-home concept, your out-of-home creative? How can we take advantage of the moment in order to get people to want to?
I think the first part of that is design. I mean, nobody's going to share a poorly designed ad. It's as simple as that.
Simple.
Really simple. If it looks like rubbish, why share it? And then the other thing, it comes down to context. You know, if you catch a moment, if you take, for example, the recent Nike campaign, it's just perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Same with Spotify, same with Twitter. Last year's Cannes Line outdoor winner was Twitter hashtag. And it was beautifully simple. It had literally a hashtag with an image. So if you see an image, if you see a poster and it had a hashtag with Donald Trump in it, you know exactly what it's about. It's about the news around Donald Trump. You share it. It's just instantly gettable. If you understand it in a heartbeat.
I agree with all that. Make it original. Make it something that they're going to want to take a picture of because they haven't seen it before, or use emotion. You've got these kind of amazing campaigns that can really grab the attention of the audience and focused, relevant, targeted, dynamic advertising. But the ones that start to hit the social sphere and really kind of propel off are the ones with that added emotional benefit, whether it's something that pulls your heartstrings or whether it's something that just makes you smile. That added level beyond that standard is really kind of, that's the part when I think social kind of engagement and sharing really comes into it, because people want to share an emotion. They want to say to their friends, hey, look at this made me smile, this will make you smile too. And however clever a dynamic ad is and however much it might make them want to buy something, they might not want to share those ones. So to kind of go to that level, something that we also look at when we come up with creative campaigns is, should we be creating a social video around this? Should we be extending this into the social sphere? And it's that kind of thing, when you're creating an original concept at the beginning, how does the social video look? So when we're writing a brief response for a client and a brand, we'll say, hey, here's the digital out-of-home idea, and we'll write up a quick treatment of how the social video might look, because it can be different from the everyday kind of public experience of it. And we kind of fix up the power of some of the emotional parts to really allow that to fly online.
One thing you said, well, I also agree. I just want to put that out there. But I think it's great that you mentioned thinking about the social video and what that looks like, because it's very important. We see from performance metrics, let's put it that way, that having these media types work together in terms of their content, in terms of synergy between the content, is very important.
I think the BA lookup campaign that you referenced, I don't know a single person who actually saw that. I don't know one person who saw that working, right?
I definitely wasn't.
But the video garnered hundreds of millions of views and won loads of awards.
And an interesting thing with Pepsi Max is we did it the other way around with the Pepsi Max AR campaign. We had it on a JC2Co screen, and we ran it and we filmed it on the first day it was up. But we also took a decision to then run the AR campaign on the street for 4 weeks after that social video. So we shot the video on the first day, we seeded it about 3 days later, and then it went viral and it got all of its millions of viewers. And then for the next 3 weeks, the screen became a kind of a tourist location for people to go down and have a play themselves. So it was a kind of inverse way of thinking, that we planned for the social video and then we planned for people to go down and go to the screen and play along with it, because no one had really seen that type of thing. So there's all sorts of different ways you can push the activation and the engagement. And I think knowing that at the beginning is the real key to all of this.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that up, because a lot of the times I get questions from clients that are asking, okay, I do this really cool AR thing in one place, but only a couple people will see it. So what is your response to that?
Any interactive campaign which runs on one screen, understand that you're not going to get your millions of people going down and seeing it. If you want millions of people to go see it and shoot the video, plan it. Plan with the social media team, the publicist, the PR strategy. Get that right so it just doesn't disappear online. and then, you know, if it has traction, then rerun the campaign, get people down and publicize it that way. But I think there's this level with interactive campaigns where people kind of get frustrated that not many people actually played with it for real. And I think it's just understanding at the beginning that an interactive campaign won't have that kind of audience to it. And understanding what you're wanting that interactive campaign to do in itself, whether it's social sharing, whether it's the video, whether it is just touching the hearts of that many people in that street at that time. They're all valid.
Yeah, could be. Rick, Keith, do you want to take a stab at that question? Or?
Well, I prefer scalable stuff, right? That's just how we operate. We prefer the scale stuff. We prefer just natural intelligence of data integration. And so these kinds of campaigns are great because they drive awareness of the industry. But in terms of the day-to-day future of where we will be going, it's in scalable data integration, in my opinion.
I just want to bring up here, this is a good example of, there was a recent campaign done by Clear Channel in Sweden for a homeless shelter charity. And this is a great time to talk about that because this was a campaign that went viral, did all the press, and got a huge amount of traction there. But at the end of it, it was a dynamic campaign across multiple screens with scale that had a massively important function to it. If people aren't kind of aware of it, it used simple data triggers. It didn't use anything too complicated. And it had on these screens, when the temperature dropped below 7 degrees, it alerted people where the nearest homeless shelter was and the temperature, and gave them directions and how far away it was. And it was an incredibly powerful campaign that had a direct positive action. It wasn't something that kind of was going to go up on a Facebook page and hope to get action there. It was having a direct action with people on the street. So it had that interactivity. It also had the scale. It also had the dynamic. It kind of worked under all of those guises. And as a creative, when you see one of those ones, and you kind of go, wow, that everything just makes perfect sense. And that's what we strive for every time we're doing one of these, is how do we get the perfect campaign like that?
Yeah, also fantastic campaign. Also very beautiful in terms of looking at it when it comes to out of home, what it can do in terms of purpose, in terms of helping a community. And you're very much right when you say out of home can have an impact. It can have an impact socially. It can have an impact on people worldwide, but it can also very much have an impact on people who live on that street. It's a very good, how are we doing on timing? Just keep going. All right. I have one quick question. Well, maybe it's quick, maybe it's not. So we are undergoing what you might call a renaissance in digital out of home. Sort of a renaissance that online has undergone a couple years ago. I'm wondering, from social, from display, are there things that we can learn from them? Maybe things that we should not do from online display that we should be considering when creating content for out of home?
Yeah, we're not online. Simple. We're not online. We're not one-to-one. We're one-to-many, and we shouldn't forget that, basically.
All right.
From my perspective, I think creative, understand who's looking at it for how long. Online, it hits a certain saturation point now, as it was mentioned earlier, where people just scroll past things. And people will just walk past screens, and the more screens there are, the more digital out of home continues to expand at the way it is. You know, the challenge we face with that is the more people will become kind of more blasé to the screens, they get used to them and keep their heads down and look at the mobile. So what can we do to change that? We just need to push the creative to make as best sense, to be as targeted, as relevant and focused as possible, so we're getting the right message to the right person at the right time. That was a learning from online, and it's something that we need to continue to do ourselves.
Great. All right. I think we can go to some questions. If there are people in the audience that have questions for these two lovely panelists up here. Yes, one over there. Do we need a microphone or yeah?
It's a heckler at the back.
It's not. I'll give you a chance. Do you want the easy question or the hard question?
Go for the hard one.
Okay. Great. The easy one was the pizza one anyway. So the hard one. So imagine Coca-Cola have come to you with a brief. Great opportunity to get some everyday dynamic content just in there. So say if the brief was 100K, so a question for Oskar, how much of that would you reserve for the production costs?
Ooh.
Question for me.
Good question.
I was not expecting. Good question. Yeah. How much of that would I reserve for the production costs? It really depends, I would say, on the extent of the idea. Yeah, I mean, in the end, if it's a simple dynamic idea, then I don't know, maybe 20%, 10-20%. Yeah, but then of course, you know, if you go beyond that, if you're thinking live streaming, if you're thinking connections to other data sources, then yeah, of course you should be thinking further. But yeah, for a simple dynamic, yeah. Do you have a question for these guys, or do you want to take it?
My opinion should be never more than 10% of media budget. I mean, that's where we try to target. We always question with clients if it goes towards 50-60% of the entire media budget, ask why. You know, why are we doing this? I've worked on campaigns where the production budget has been double the media budget, and you really have to wonder what's the value, what exactly is the reasoning behind that. I think also production costs have kept innovation stunted a bit in out of home, to be honest. Again, you know, if things are costing £30,000 for a weather trigger, why would a client do that unless you've got huge budgets? And the vast majority of our future clients will not be the big companies. There'll be smaller companies, they've got smaller budgets, but they have as much right to intelligence in out of home as the large clients. And we should be pricing to make that happen. The flip side to that as well, or the bonus to that reality is that if it's a low cost, low enough price point, you start to get this happening more and more just by nature, basically.
As a creative, we're not allowed to talk about money too much because it's all about the creative idea. My view on that one would be, if the idea is good enough, then the client will pay more for it. And we've seen that. Similarly, if the client really wants to do something and there isn't the budget, then you can tweak a creative idea to work under certain conditions there. There are ways to create linear copy, as we talked about, where you schedule it and make relevant copy that doesn't have to extend if you don't want it to. So my kind of view on that is push it where it needs to be pushed, bring it back if you need to bring it back, but don't kind of just put all your eggs in one basket. See what you can do with that pitch and create a varied tier of options for them.
I would also ask why. Ask clients why a lot. Our industry is also quite guilty of leaping onto a buzzword quite quickly. And clients see a bit of new tech, or they see a new camera, or they see a new sensor, and they force fit that into creative ideas when it's not really the right idea. And we should encourage them not to do that by asking why.
All right. Another question.
We heard a lot about programmatic today and creative. So do you see any opportunities or new ways to use creative ideas via the programmatic channel? Saying HTML5 and so on, and knowing through programmatic what the screen sizes are and so on, and you can much more direct the creatives towards your time of day or a lot of triggers which you can use.
It's all possible, is the answer. It's all possible, but it does depend on your ecosystems, the legacy systems you're trying to fit tech into. But the short answer is it's all possible right now. I mean, even a simple weather-triggered campaign is programmatic to an extent. It is coming on when the conditions are right. So the word programmatic as well, there's just too many meanings to it. A lot of the time we're meaning automation when we say programmatic. So I think of course there's value in programmatic triggering the creative conversation. How widely it's going to be adopted at this point, too early to say, but it's coming for sure.
And I'd say to that, most dynamic campaigns we do in an HTML5, so there's already that direct link to that to enable it to do whatever you need it to do. Sitting back on the creative side of things, something we kind of haven't touched upon, but a big old challenge we get faced with every day is that it seems that we have more and more different shapes and sizes of screens across the world. I mean, it's very rare that we have kind of production report with 2 standard sizes on it. So creatively, we're always challenged with how do we make creative fit all of these, 150 different shapes and sizes when we're delivering a campaign. I expect in the next couple of years we're going to start to see some more automation with that. In the same way that online started to allow the web banners and websites to kind of scale up and down and obey those rules, I think we're going to start seeing similar things happen. I was talking to Jeff earlier about this. We're going to see online banners become part of the digital out-of-home campaign. We're going to see a blending there, so that there's going to be 3 or 4 different master sizes that start to automatically scale up and down in the same way they do online onto digital out-of-home. So that's a way that creative can continue to adapt with the demands that we have for all these different formats.
I would also advise just taking sensible steps. So to your question, my question back to you would be, how many dynamic campaigns are you running at the moment? I suspect it's in the low percentages. So let's crack that first, and programmatic will follow.
All right. Any other? Yeah. Okay. One more in the back.
Just wanted to ask about user-generated content, bringing it into the public domain, into outdoor. In Australia, each state's got different legislation and different rules, and we have to jump through a lot of hoops and be very careful. Even with your Spotify campaign, we were questioned about what the opt-in and opt-out processes were. Is that something you or anyone else in the room has fears about?
I think we've already had to confront those fears. When GDPR came in, we had to change a lot. I think when we are running, we used to run Twitter or Instagram generated content that would automatically scrape the social sites and put up online onto digital out of home. A lot of the time we can't do that anymore. We have to put in an extra level of moderation. So, for example, the user-generated content we did last year for a Game of Thrones campaign, we had to get hold of the pictures by scraping ourselves, and then write to the people who own those ones for their permission. So you got this added level. It's still dynamically put those ones up on the digital out of home screens, but yeah, we're seeing an added level that requires kind of consent or GDPR, and I think that's going to continue. Once everyone kind of knows those general rules, I think things will get back to kind of an understanding of what we need to do each time. But the way that we're looking at campaigns now, we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis and understand how we're going to achieve that and what extra rules that we have to put in there to achieve that sort of that consensus.
It's also easy enough to create moderation portals. So there's one UK media owner that, because of their landlord, has to go through a moderation process for every one of these types of campaigns. And you basically create a very quick sign-off moderation portal that allows them to do that at the click of a button. It takes seconds to do that, but the onus is back on them and they can control it all.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times you already have you have to have some layer of checking because the brand has to agree that the content is also fits with the brand and they want to be associated with that content. So there's already a layer there where the content is being checked. But yeah, as Rick mentioned, I think we'll see a bit more layers there in order to make sure privacy is kept up to snuff. And then also, yeah, once that becomes more common, we'll have hopefully faster processes. Thank you.